Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes through Prabhupada. Prasant Mataji, whenever you are ready, you can start, Mataji.
Sure, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Yuttama Shloki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Today we are reading Canto 1 of Srimad Bhagavatam, 15th chapter, text 11. During our exile, Durvasa Muni, who eats with his 10,000 disciples, intrigued with our enemies to put us in dangerous trouble. At that time, he, Lord Krishna, simply by accepting the remnants of food, saved us. By his accepting food, thus the assembly of Munis, while bathing in the river, felt sumptuously fed. All the three worlds were also satisfied. Text 12. It was by his influence only that in a fight I was able to astonish the personality of God, Lord Shiva, and his wife, the daughter of Mount Himalaya. Thus he, Lord Shiva, became pleased with me and awarded me his own weapon. Other demigods also delivered their respective weapons to me, and in addition, I was able to reach the heavenly planets in this present body and was allowed a half-elevated seat. Text 13. When I stayed for some days as a guest in the heavenly planets, all the heavenly demigods, including King Indradev, took shelter of my arms, which were marked with the Gandiva bow to kill the demon named Nivatakavaka Kavacha, the king descendant of Ajamida. At the present moment, I am bereft of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whose influence I was so powerful. Text 14. The military strength of the Kauravas was like an ocean in which there dwelled many invincible existences, and thus it was insurmountable. But because of his friendship, I seated on the chariot and was able to cross over it. And only by his grace I was able to regain the cows and also collect by force many helmets of the kings, which were bedecked with jewels that were sources of all brilliance. Text 15. It was he only who withdrew the duration of life from everyone and who in the battlefield withdrew the speculative power and strength of enthusiasm from the great military phalanx made by the Kauravas, headed by Bhishma, Karna, Drona, Salya, etc. Their arrangement was expert and more than adequate, but he, Lord Sri Krishna, while going forward did all this. Text 16. Great generals like Bhishma, Drona, Karna, Buriswara, Susharma, Salya, Jayadratha, and Bahilaka all directed their invincible weapons against me. But by his Lord Krishna's grace, they could not even touch a hair of my head. Similarly, Prahlada Maharaj, the supreme devotee of Lord Narsimhadev, was unaffected by the weapons the demons used against him. Text 17. It was by his mercy only that my enemies neglected to kill me when I descended from my chariot to get water for my thirsty horses. And it was due to my lack of esteem for my Lord that I dared engage him as my chariot driver, for he is worshipped and offered services by the best men to attain salvation. Text 18. O King, his jokings and frank talks were pleasing and beautifully decorated with smiles. His addresses up onto me as O son of Partha, O friend, O son of the Kuru dynasty, and all such heartiness are now remembered by me, and thus I am overwhelmed. Text 19. Generally, both of us used to live together and sleep, sit and loiter together. And at the time of advertising oneself for acts of chivalry, sometimes if there were any irregularity, I used to reproach him by saying, "My friend, you are very truthful. Even in those hours when his value was minimized, he, being the supreme soul, used to tolerate all those utterings of mine, excusing me exactly as a true friend excuses his true friend, or a father excuses his son." Text 20. O Emperor, now I am separated from my friend and dearmost well-wisher, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore my heart appears to be void of everything. In his presence, I have been defeated by a number of infidel cowhead men, while I was guaranteed the bodies of all the wives of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mother. Yeah, Vamsi Vadan Prabhu, whenever you're ready, you can start, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu. ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरान्तस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वतदेवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे। जय श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैता गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So we are continuing the chapter 15, where Arjuna is recalling his interactions with Krishna and the intimate protection that he was given during the presence of Krishna. So all these prayers are very, very enlivening for all of us when we read Arjuna's heart, and he is feeling separation from Krishna towards the end of the prayers. The next section starts. So this section he's recalling what all protection that Krishna actually provided to Arjuna during his presence. So in the 11th verse, we see that Arjuna is recalling during the visit of Durvasa Muni, when they were hostile, when the Pandavas were there in the forest. When Durvasa Muni came, it's a very famous pastime that many of us are aware. So Prabhupada gives in the purport a brief history about Durvasa Muni. That Durvasa Muni, we also see in the 4th canto that he is actually an emanation, or he was born out of Anasuya and Atri Muni, and he is a partial incarnation or an expansion of Lord Shiva. So exactly because he is a partial expansion of Lord Shiva, he has some of the qualities of Lord Shiva, like he is Ashutosh, so he can be easily pleased, but at the same time easily displeased. So Prabhupada writes that he also possessed great mystic powers, that he could even travel long distances, like we see in the 9th canto, that he could travel up to even the Vaikuntha planets. So he's such a mystic, and he comes with 10,000 disciples to meet the Pandavas. And Duryodhan, being very cunning, like he always wanted to get rid of the Pandavas or demean them, he sends Durvasa Muni to the Pandavas when they were in the forest during the exile. And he specifically sends Durvasa Muni at that time when there is no food available in the place where the Pandavas were staying, because he very well knew that when Draupadi takes food and when she finishes food, that's it. They cannot feed anybody who's coming to visit them. Duryodhana was aware of this. So somebody who's really envious or cunning, they'll always want to demean or put down others. And that is Duryodhana's attitude always. So When Durvasa Muni eventually reaches there, Draupadi had already taken the meals and she goes into panic mode and nobody knows what to do. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, he sends Durvasa Muni and his disciples to go to a nearby river and take bath and then come back, so that somehow or the other they can arrange for some food for the Durvasa Muni and their disciples. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, when the devotees are put into difficulty, they have an opportunity to recollect the Lord with rapt attention. Something for all of us to meditate on, because not all the time, in fact, in this material world, Krishna says, Dukkalayam Ashashvatam. We are, most of the times, we are put into very difficult situations. At that time, we should always try to remember Krishna and pray to him intensely within our heart. We also see in Chaitanya Charitamrita the Brahman who promises this younger Brahman that he will give his daughter as his wife, and when he goes back, his family is totally against him. So he doesn't know whether he has to fulfill the promise of the younger Brahmana or Gopal, or go against his family. What he did, he simply prayed intensely to Krishna, please save me, Krishna. Krishna eventually saved both the older and the younger Brahmana. So another lesson we can learn. So even in this purport, Krishna, because Draupadi intensely calls for Krishna. Draupadi is such an exalted devotee. She, as soon as a very pure devotee of Krishna calls, Krishna comes. Krishna will come. That is why we call Prana Pratishtha, right? When a pure devotee calls for Krishna, Krishna comes and resides within the deity form, so that devotees can serve Krishna. So Draupadi calls Krishna with intense feeling and separation from Krishna during this situation, and Krishna appears, and Krishna asks for food. Surprisingly to Draupadi's condition, Krishna comes and says, I'm hungry, can you feed me? And Draupadi says, I cannot, I don't have any food, that's the reason why I'm calling you. Then Krishna says that there should be some food sticking in probably one of those vessels, so please go and check. And somehow Draupadi finds that magic vessel that she has and brings it to Krishna, and Krishna just takes one portion of food sticking to that vessel, and as soon as Krishna takes that food, all the disciples of Durvasa Muni, and including Durvasa Muni, they are full, even though they are very far away taking part. And then Yudhishthira Maharaj, feeling that these people haven't arrived yet, he sends Bhim. And as soon as he sends Bhim, and it's a long pastime, but paraphrasing, Prabhupada writes that because Krishna ate, everybody were full, and they didn't want to even come back. So Prabhupada writes a very another instruction in the purport for all of us to follow, because whenever Prabhupada says must or only, we have to follow. There is no other way. So Prabhupada writes, another instruction is that every householder must offer food to the Lord, and the result will be that everyone, even a company of guests numbering to 10,000, will be satisfied because of the Lord's being satisfied. So we must take food offered to Krishna, not eat here and there. Because when we offer food to Krishna and they partake, we are satisfied, and the people who are visiting our ashram is also satisfied. And in text 12, Arjuna also recalls about his interactions with the Lord Shiva, how he pleased Lord Shiva, and he was awarded the weapon for him to fight later. And Arjuna recalls that he got many other weapons from other demigods also, and he was also able to reach heavenly planets in the present body. So Prabhupada catches some keywords from those translations and expands. So in the purport, Prabhupada writes that the idea is that one who is favored by Lord Shiva not necessarily be favored by Lord Krishna. Srila Prabhupada gives example of Ramana, who tried to please Lord Shiva, but for what case? He didn't want to please Krishna to please Lord Shiva. He wanted to enjoy and be the master of this world. So our intent is what actually matters. Our intentions, pleasing demigods is not wrong. That's what Prabhupada writes. The devotees of the Supreme Lord know how to respect the demigods. So we should never disrespect the demigods. Srila Rupa Goswami writes in Nectar of Devotion that demigods needs to be given respect, but we should not equate the demigods to the Supreme Lord. That is an offense. We are called Pashandis if we do that. So Prabhupada writes another significance in the purport that by the grace of Lord Krishna, he was able to reach the heavenly planet even with the same self-made body. Because according to the pages of Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada writes that if one performs some pious acts, the person is elevated, not in the same body, but when the body perishes, a suitable body is given to us so that we can go to some higher heavenly planets. Those who are seeking to go to those realms. But Prabhupada writes that because Arjuna was allowed to enter into the heavenly planets in the self-made body simply by the grace of Lord Krishna. Otherwise, it is not possible to do so. The present attempts to enter into the heavenly planets by the modern scientists will certainly prove futile because such scientists are not on the level of Arjuna. So unless and until one is a pure devotee of Krishna, such things are impossible. Only by the grace of Krishna, pure devotee can go anywhere. Like we see the example of Srila Narad Muni. Narad Muni can travel anywhere because he is an unalloyed devotee of Krishna. So, because the present population is more or less influenced by the mode of passion and ignorance, we are becoming very lusty and greedy. So it is impossible for us to travel. And in the next verse, text 13, Prabhupada says, he was also favored by, when I stayed for some days as a guest, when he traveled to heavenly planets, he was favored by Indra, who gave him the Gandiva bow, and then which was used to kill demons. And then he says that at the present moment, I am bereft of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whose influence I was so powerful. Right. So Prabhupada writes, the Lord is all powerful, and by His grace, His pure devotee can be as powerful as he may desire. And there is no limit, Prabhupada says. There is no limit. So our acharyas say that the jivas, we are infinitesimal. We are such a small particle or part and parcel of Krishna. We are so minute. But that minute jiva can be as powerful as the Lord, if so the Lord desires, not by our desire. Just like we see Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada came to this planet. He was just one-man army. He struggled for over 4 decades trying to preach the glories of Krishna. But then Krishna made him so big that the whole world looked up to him. And so many people became devotees of Krishna. If Krishna desired, this is what Prabhupada prayed, right? When he came to the US, he prayed, Krishna, let me be your puppet. If you want me to dance, I will dance. To such a surrendered devotee, Krishna can make him so big that the whole world will become Krishna conscious, right? And then when Krishna can also withdraw the power, Prabhupada writes, from anyone, Punar Mushtiko Bhava, if we are puffed up, because like conditioned souls like myself become puffed up many times, and Krishna can withdraw all the mercy from us, and we become powerless by the will of the Lord. So by the will of the Lord, a devotee can do miracles, but by the will of the Lord, if the devotee becomes puffed up, Krishna withdraws those powers. We see many examples even in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. In text 14, Arjuna also recalls the military strength of the Kauravas were like oceanic. It was insurmountable. Arjuna is recollecting his experience in the Kurukshetra war, that it was insurmountable, so big, but still, because of his friendship, seated on the chariot with Krishna, who was seated on the chariot with Arjuna, was able to cross over this insurmountable ocean of military strength of the Kauravas. Arjuna is recollecting. He's recollecting that only by the grace of Krishna, even though Arjuna was alone sitting on the chariot, he could manage to vanquish all these army one after another without difficulty. When the Pandavas were living at the palace incognito, the Kauravas picked a quarrel with the king Virata and decided to take away his large number of cows. While they were taking away the cows, Arjuna fought them incognito and was able to regain the cows along with some booty taken by force, the jewels set on the turbans of the royal order. Arjuna remembered that all this was possible by the grace of the Lord. He was able to solely fight. We will see in the last verse in discussion just a totally opposite experience by Arjuna. But here he is claiming that he was able to solely fight and he was able to claim victory over the Kauravas because of the presence of Krishna. And then in text 15, Arjuna recalls that it was he only who withdrew the duration of life from everyone, and who in the battlefield withdrew the speculative power and strength of enthusiasm from the great military phalanx made by the Kauravas like Bhishma, Karna, Drona, Shalya, etc. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, it is Krishna who expands through Paramatma and who is sitting in everyone's heart. Only he gives remembrance, forgetfulness, knowledge, and absence. Sarvasya chaham hiri sannivishto. Only Krishna does that. And as a Supreme Lord, he can increase or decrease the duration of life of a living being. Thus, the Lord conducted the battle of Kurukshetra according to his own plan. He wanted that battle to establish Yudhishthira Maharaj as the emperor of this one. This was only, I shouldn't say only, there is other reasons, but one of the prominent reasons why the battle of Kurukshetra happened was Krishna wanted to establish Yudhishthira Maharaj as the ruler of this planet. And in order to do so, even though there were physically greater strength on the Kauravas' part, Krishna being the Paramatma in the heart, he could influence anyone to go down in a battlefield. This is exactly what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said to Srivas Thakur when he was scared that the Muslim rule will come and demolish their hut or their houses where they were staying, because the neighbors were complaining that they are just performing Nam Sankirtan the whole night. Lord Chaitanya came and promised Srivas Thakur, do you think that these people will come and do harm to you all? Huh? Don't you think that I can go, I sitting as Paramatma in their heart can influence or not influence them to come and harm you all? Exactly the same theme that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is establishing there. He's saying that I, sitting as Paramatma in everyone's heart, I can make them come and harm you or not harm you. Right? So as devotees, we should never be scared. We can become fearless only when we have faith in Krishna's protection. One of the symptoms of surrender. And then in text 16, by Lord Krishna's grace, they could not even touch a hair on my head. Arjuna is recollecting. Who? The Kauravas. Similarly, he is comparing Prahlad Maharaj, the supreme devotee of Lord Narasimhadev, was unaffected by the weapons the demons used against him. Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. Right? Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that this material energy is unsurmountable. It's very, very difficult to overcome. We should always think that, oh, I've been practicing bhakti for so many years, I'm an advanced devotee. As soon as we think like that, we are hit by the material energy by some means and we are put down. Right? All of us have this experience because we are all, at least I'm conditioned, we think we are so advanced, and as soon as we think like that, we are put down. And then Arjuna is reminding that because of Krishna's presence, nobody could touch even his hair during a battle. So Prahlad Maharaj is recollecting, so Arjuna is recollecting Prahlad Maharaj that even though his own father was envious of him, Hiranyakashipu was envious of him only because of his being a pure devotee of the Lord. Nothing happened to Prahlad Maharaj. Thus, no one can kill the devotee of the Lord. Prabhupada writes a very, very profound statement in the purport. No one can kill the devotee of the Lord. No one. Right? Something for us to meditate on, that statement. Similarly, Arjuna was also saved by the Lord, although all dangerous weapons were employed by his great opponents like Bhishma. So Krishna, when he says that he gives protection, it is not the protection to the material body. Krishna protects the soul of his devotee. No matter what happens, Krishna is there. We see several examples like Bharat Maharaj. So many examples within the pages of Bhagavatam. Krishna protects his devotee, as he promises in Bhagavad Gita in the 9th chapter. And then Prabhupada gives a history about Karna. We don't have time to go through, but then Prabhupada writes some important points in the purport that Karna, because he was too lusty to marry Draupadi, he was actually so furious that Arjuna won the battle of winning the hand of Draupadi, and he even sometimes tried Karna advised Duryodhana to attack King Drupada, who is the father of Draupadi. After defeating him, both Arjuna and Draupadi could be arrested. But Dronacharya rebuked them for this conspiracy and they refrained from the action. So only because of Dronacharya's advice, Karna refrained from such abominable actions. And Karna was defeated many times, not only by Arjuna but also by Bhimsen. He was the king of the kingdom of Bengal, Orissa, and Madras combined. Some interesting facts Prabhupada writes. And then when Draupadi was in the game of the gambling, he was very enthusiastic to declare the news. And it was he who ordered Dushasan to take away the garments of both the Pandavas and Draupadi. See, such things Karna did. Even though he was a so-called abandoned child of Kunti, Karna had a very different history. We don't have time. Our devotees have done a lot of research about Karna. So Karna, he has, because of his demoniac nature that is still there within him, even though he was born out of Kunti's womb, he had some demoniac nature within him. And also he had this demoniac association. So this is something for us to always understand, that we should always pay note whom we are associating with. Association can really spoil our consciousness. It can really spoil it. We may have had a nice day practicing bhajan, but then as soon as we are in the wrong association, our consciousness gets polluted. So asatsanga tyaga e Vaishnava achar. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says we have to always watch whom we are associating with. And because of this fact, you see what abominable acts Karna had done, which resulted him being killed by Arjuna, when Karna was actually fixing his wheel, when he was not supposed to kill him, because Krishna instructed him to kill Karna. So then Prabhupada also writes about different devotees within the purport. We don't have time to discuss about all the devotees, but some important aspects, that some of these devotees, because they, like for example, Napta and Burishrava, even though he was favorable for some of the acts that the Pandavas did, but still he was having materialistic ambitions in life. So because of that, later when Arjuna killed him, Arjuna cut off his hands and he was ultimately killed by Satyaki. After his death, he went into the existence of Vishwadev. Vishwadev is the place where people, a heavenly realm, one who desires, Prabhupada writes in another portion of Bhagavatam, one who desires worldly kingdom worships this heavenly planet and actually goes there once we actually die. Then Prabhupada writes about Jayadratha, very long purport, but in short, Prabhupada writes that Jayadratha, he was also very lusty against Draupadi. See, many of the Kauravas were very, very greedy and lusty because of their envious association to lord it over the Pandavas. Very important lesson for all of us too. We should always try to not harm devotees, right? When we are envious of devotees, envious feelings about any devotee, it can harm us very quickly. So Jayadratha was wanting to try to get the hand of Draupadi multiple times, even though she refused him, Prabhupada writes. But he was still not discouraged. See, this is what lust can happen. Lust can do to us, like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. When a person is lusty, see what all can happen. Then the Pandavas attacked the soldiers of Jayadratha because they came to know about that Jayadratha was trying to, by force, somehow convince Draupadi. Pandavas attacked the soldiers of Jayadratha and killed them all. And at last Bhim caught hold of Jayadratha and beat him very severely, almost he was dead. But because of Yudhishthira Maharaj's intervention, he forced him not to be killed, and he was forced to admit himself to be a slave of Maharaj Yudhishthira. And then, being so insulted, he went to Gangotri in the Himalayas and undertook severe type of penance to please Lord Shiva. He asked his benediction to defeat all the Pandavas at least one at a time. You see, when a person is so envious, unless and until they submissively go and surrender to a pure devotee, it is impossible to take the envious feeling out of our heart. Impossible. See, even though Jayadratha did so many heinous acts, still he wanted to go and please Lord Shiva. For what? Not for repenting, but to again go and beat the Pandavas. Lord Shiva, he may sometimes apparently give some vague benedictions, but in the end it is good for the soul. When Lord Shiva gave this one benediction to Jayadratha that he can beat the Pandavas at least once, in that once, that benediction that he got, he was able to kill Abhimanyu, that famous pastime where all the Kauravas covered Abhimanyu and he was trapped and no one could do anything and Abhimanyu was killed. And because of that fact, Arjuna became so angry on Jayadratha that he actually was able to kill Jayadratha very famously. It's a very famous pastime because Jayadratha actually had the benediction that whoever would cut off his head, that person's head will actually fall down first. He will die, whoever cuts off Jayadratha's head. So Arjuna knew about this benediction from Lord Shiva. So what he does, therefore, Krishna advised Arjuna that to throw the head of Jayadratha directly onto the lap of his father, who was engaged in penance at the Samantaka Panchaka pilgrimage. So Arjuna released an arrow that actually cut off the head of Jayadratha and it fell on his father's lap, who was actually performing penance. And then in the next purport, Arjuna recollects that it was by his mercy only that my enemies neglected to kill me when I descended from my chariot to get water from the thirsty horses. So Prabhupada writes in the purport that in the times of Mahabharata and when Krishna was there, the Kshatriyas knew the art of simply using the arrow at any instant to pierce through the ground to get water, to feed the horses, because Prabhupada writes that the horses will feel thirsty because they are in war continuously, right? Only in the evenings they may actually have rest. So whenever the horses or anybody needed water, they could actually take water. So even during that time when Arjuna is trying to take water or feed the horses water, Arjuna is recollecting that he was saved by the mercy of Krishna, because at any time he could have been killed during that time. But he is recollecting that even during these times, because he was a friend of Krishna, he was saved. So Prabhupada writes, the modern scientists, they have tried to, at the present moment, only boring concept is there, where you have to dig a lot for a long time, then you can actually see some water. But Prabhupada writes, in those days, simply by piercing arrow, they could actually get water. And then from text 18 onwards, Arjuna is remembering some intimate moments. See, when a pure devotee, this is Prabhupada writes in the later chapters of Bhagavatam, this is called mood of separation, Vipralamba Bhav. In different realms of Vaikuntha up to Golok Vrindavan, every pure devotee will feel intense separation with Krishna. And Arjuna is feeling similar separation. He is telling in 18th verse, O king, his jokings and frank talks were pleasing and beautifully decorated with smiles. His addresses unto me, O son of Krita, O friend, O son of Kuru dynasty, all such heartiness are now remembered by me, and thus I am overwhelmed. Arjuna is feeling overwhelmed by remembering Krishna's interactions that he had, and he is feeling void within his heart. And then even in those hours when his value was minimized, when Arjuna is saying, I used to reproach him by saying, my friend, you are very truthful. Even in those hours when his value was minimized, he being the super soul used to tolerate all those utterings of mine, excusing me exactly as a true friend excuses his true friend, or a father excuses his son. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, the Lord relishes the reproaches of friends, parents, and fiancés more than the Vedic hymns offered to him by great learned scholars and religionists in an official fashion. So Krishna likes his devotees to chastise them. We should not imitate this. This is done by pure devotees who have nothing else in life other than Krishna. This is what Prabhupada says, what this Krishna consciousness movement is going to give to people. When a person becomes pure devotee, Krishna becomes subservient to that devotee. And this is exactly what Krishna is doing here. Krishna reciprocates with his devotees as friends, parents, as fiancés, more than the chanting of the Vedic hymns. This is Krishna. And then in the last verse, this is such an amazing verse. Arjuna is recollecting that he is feeling so much separation from Krishna. He is recollecting that therefore my heart is void of everything. Why? In his absence, I have been defeated by a number of infidel cowherd men when I was guarding the bodies of the wives of Krishna. So the same Arjuna who was able to defeat such big armies of the Kauravas in the presence of Krishna, but in the absence of Krishna, Arjuna is recollecting that he was defeated by some infidel cowherd men when Arjuna was guarding the wives of Krishna. Prabhupada writes, he quotes Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who quotes from Vishnu Purana and Brahma Purana, that it is said that once the fair denizens of heaven pleased Ashtavakra Muni by their service and were blessed by the Muni to have the Supreme Lord as their husband. And Ashtavakra Muni was curved in 8 points. So because of that, he used to walk in a very different, clumsy way, apparently, in a curved manner, Prabhupada writes. So because of this, the daughters of the demigods could not check their laughter. They laughed at Ashtavakra Muni, seeing his curvy nature. And because of this, the Muni became angry at them and cursed them that they would be kidnapped by the rogues. But the girls, again satisfied the Muni, they felt repentant, and actually they prayed to Ashtavakra Muni, and Ashtavakra Muni blessed them that they would again regain their husband even after being robbed by the rogues. And in order to satisfy, you see, Krishna's one single act can satisfy multiple points. Inconceivable. This is exactly what Krishna says in the 4th chapter to Arjuna, that I can remember all of your past lives, but you cannot, Krishna. Krishna knows past, present, and future. Vedaham samati tani vartamani cha Arjuna. He remembers everything. What is going to happen to us? Can humble us. So, Krishna's, Srila Prabhupada says in the purport that Lord Krishna kidnapped, he disguised to kidnap his own wives. Arjuna doesn't know all this. Lord Krishna himself comes, kidnaps the wives from the production of Arjuna. Otherwise, they would have at once vanished from the scene as soon as they were touched by the rope. See, anybody who becomes dear to Krishna, nobody can touch them. Exactly the same principles in Ramayana. Right? Prabhupada writes in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, that the Ravana who kidnapped Sita was not the actual Sita. It was Maya Sita. A consort of the Supreme Lord cannot be touched by a conditioned soul. Cannot be. What to speak of even touch? Cannot even see, perceive. Like, because Prabhupada says conditioned souls with our defective eyes, we cannot see Krishna. If we cannot see Krishna, what to speak of Krishna's consorts? We cannot. So Prabhupada is quoting the Acharyas that Krishna himself came and kidnapped his own wives in the production of Arjuna. And Arjuna is recollecting all these instances. And Prabhupada writes, similarly, some of the gopis who prayed to become the wives of Krishna returned to their respective positions after their desire was fulfilled. Some of the gopis in Vrindavan expanded themselves to be Krishna's consorts. This comes later in the 10th canto. They expanded themselves to become the wives of Dwaraka. And as soon as those pastimes were wound up by Krishna, Prabhupada writes that they all went back home, back to Godhead, and they were called back under different conditions, under different instances. They were all called back. So so the next few verses will be completed in the next few days about Arjuna continuing to remember and feeling void in total separation of Krishna. We'll stop here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Gaur, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vamsi Prabhu. It was wonderful class. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.